There was a time when a husband and wife stood by each other no matter what. Through hard times, through arguments, through years of sacrifice, they stayed silent about the hard stuff because that was what loyalty looked like. But what happened on Family Feud that afternoon shook an entire studio audience. And it started with one woman who had kept quiet for far too long. Her name was Gloria, and when Steve Harvey asked her a simple question in front of millions of people, what came out of her mouth was not an answer to a survey. It was the truth she had been holding for 22 years. Steve Harvey had seen thousands of families on that stage. He had heard funny answers, wild answers, and answers that made no sense at all. But nothing had ever prepared him for what Gloria said next. When he heard it, Steve stopped walking, he stopped smiling, and for the first time in over a decade of hosting, Steve Harvey stood completely still and silent on his own show. This is the story of Gloria and Raymond Washington. And by the end of it, you are going to understand something important about love, sacrifice, and what it means to carry a burden alone for decades. Gloria Washington was 58 years old. She had the kind of face that told a story before she ever opened her mouth. Warm eyes with just a little tiredness behind them, a smile that came easily but faded quickly when she thought nobody was looking. She had grown up in Birmingham, Alabama, the second of 5 children in a household where her mother worked nights at a textile factory and her father worked days at a parts warehouse. Nobody in her family had ever been on television. Nobody had ever expected to be. Gloria had met Raymond at a church social in 1988. He was tall, quiet, and had a way of listening that made her feel like the most important person in any room. They married 2 years later, right after Gloria finished her certification as a licensed practical nurse. She was 24. Raymond was 27. For the next 2 decades, they built a life together in Memphis, Tennessee. Raymond worked as a long-haul truck driver, gone sometimes for 2 and 3 weeks at a stretch. Gloria worked double shifts at a regional hospital, raising their 2 daughters, Tanya and Keisha, mostly on her own during the long weeks Raymond was on the road. From the outside, it looked like a solid life. A small house with a garden out back, 2 daughters who made honor roll, a husband who came home tired but always brought flowers from wherever he had been. People in their neighborhood respected them, their church knew them by name. But inside that house, behind the flowers and the honor roll certificates and the Sunday dinners, something had been quietly breaking for a very long time. Raymond had been diagnosed with early-stage Parkinson's disease 6 years earlier. The tremors had started small, a shaking hand when he poured his morning coffee, a stumble on the front steps that he laughed off as clumsiness. But Gloria knew. She was a nurse. She recognized the signs before the doctors confirmed them. What nobody outside their home knew was what had happened after the diagnosis. Raymond had made Gloria promise not to tell anyone, not their daughters who were grown by then, not their friends from church, not his own brothers. He was a proud man. He had spent his whole life being the strong one, the provider, the one who showed up. He could not bear the idea of people looking at him differently. So Gloria kept the secret. For 6 years, she managed his medications in silence, scheduled his appointments without telling anyone why, and watched the man she had loved since 1988 slowly change, all without a single person to talk to about it. When their daughter Tanya had entered the family on Family Feud as a surprise birthday gift for her parents' anniversary, Gloria had almost said no. She did not know how Raymond would handle the lights, the noise, the standing for long periods. But Raymond had insisted. He wanted one normal day. One day where they were just a family having fun on television, and nothing else. Gloria agreed. She packed his medications in her purse. She held his arm in the parking lot. She smiled for the cameras. And then Steve Harvey asked her a question she was not ready for. The Washington family had made it to the fast money round. It was Tanya who had led the charge through the main game. Quick, competitive, funny in that sharp way that made the audience laugh out loud. Her mother had played quietly beside her, giving steady answers, never drawing attention to herself. Raymond sat in the front row of the audience with Keisha, their younger daughter. He had his hands folded in his lap, which was how he kept people from noticing the tremor. Gloria had spotted it the moment they sat down. She always spotted it. The fast money round began. Tanya went first and scored 143 points, strong, but not quite enough. That meant Gloria had to close the gap. She needed 57 points from 5 questions to win the 20,000 prize. Steve Harvey walked over to her with his usual warmth, that big, easy smile that made every contestant feel like they were talking to an old friend. "Gloria, you ready to bring this home for the family?" he asked. Gloria nodded and straightened her blazer. Navy blue, the one Raymond had said made her look like a queen when she put it on that morning. She placed her hands on the podium. "I'm ready, Mr. Harvey," she said. The questions started. Gloria answered quickly and cleanly, the way she did everything, no drama, no hesitation, just steady competence. The answers were good. Not perfect, but good. When the board revealed her scores, the family had won. The Washingtons had their 20 of Zalozin. The studio erupted. Tanya screamed and hugged her mother. Keisha was jumping up and down in the front row. Raymond rose slowly from his seat, carefully, the way he always had to now, and he was clapping. His right hand trembling slightly but clapping. Gloria saw it immediately. She always saw it. Steve Harvey was doing his post-game celebration, working the crowd, laughing with the daughters. But he was also watching Gloria. Because Gloria was not celebrating the way the others were. She was watching her husband walk toward the stage, and her expression had shifted into something that Steve, with all his years of reading people, recognized as something more complicated than joy. He walked over to her as Raymond reached the stage. "Gloria," Steve said, his voice dropping just slightly from his performance register into something more personal, "before we wrap up, I have to ask you something. You played that round so focused, so calm. I've seen a lot of people up here. I want to know, what were you thinking about when you were answering those questions?" The studio quieted. It was the kind of question Steve Harvey occasionally asked when something told him there was more to a story. The audience leaned in. Gloria looked at Steve. Then she looked at Raymond, who had just reached the edge of the stage and was standing with Keisha's hand in his. And something shifted in her face. 22 years of keeping her word. 6 years of carrying a secret that weighed more than anything she had ever lifted. One husband who had asked her not to say a word. She looked back at Steve Harvey, and she broke her silence. "I was thinking about my husband," she said. Her voice was steady, but only barely. "And I was thinking about how tired I am of pretending everything is fine." The studio went very quiet. "Raymond was diagnosed with Parkinson's 6 years ago," Gloria said. "He made me promise not to tell anyone, and I have kept that promise every single day. I have kept it from our daughters, from our friends, from our church. I've kept it through every doctor's appointment, every bad morning, every night I've sat up worrying alone." She paused. Her eyes had filled, but she was not crying yet. She was still the nurse, still composed, still holding it together the way she always did. "But we won today," she said. "We won, and Raymond is standing right there, and I just thought, I have spent 6 years protecting him by staying silent. Maybe today I can protect him by finally telling the truth." The audience was completely still. Raymond stood at the edge of the stage. His right hand was trembling. His eyes were wet. Steve Harvey had not moved. For a moment that felt much longer than it was, nobody on that stage said anything. Then Steve Harvey did something that his producers had never seen him do in the middle of a taping. He set his microphone down on the podium. He walked to the edge of the stage where Raymond was standing, and he extended his hand, not for a handshake but palm up, the way you offer a hand to someone who is unsteady. Raymond looked at it. Then he took it, and Steve helped him up the last step onto the stage. The audience, which had been silent, exhaled all at once. Steve picked his microphone back up, but he did not speak right away. He stood with Raymond beside him, one hand still lightly on the older man's arm, and he looked out at the audience for a long moment. Then he turned to Gloria. "How long did you say you've been keeping that secret?" he asked. 6 years, Gloria said. 6 years. Steve repeated it slowly. He shook his head, not in disbelief but in something that looked like deep respect. 6 years of doctor's appointments, of watching him, of being his nurse and his wife at the same time, alone, because he asked you to. Gloria nodded. "Ramond," Steve said, turning to the man beside him, "your wife just told the world something you asked her to keep secret. I want to ask you something, and you don't have to answer if you don't want to. Are you angry with her?" Raymond Washington looked at his wife for a long time. The tremor in his right hand had not stopped. His eyes were full of tears that he was not letting fall, in the way of men who have spent a lifetime believing that crying in public was not something they were supposed to do. Then he slowly shook his head. "No," he said. His voice was rough, accented with the deep South, thick with emotion. "No, I'm not angry." He paused, swallowed hard. "I'm relieved," he said. "I am so relieved." And that was when Gloria Washington finally stopped holding herself together. She crossed the stage to her husband. He opened his arms, both of them, tremor and all, and she walked into them, and the two of them stood there in the middle of Family Feud, holding on to each other, while their daughters came up from the audience and joined them, and the studio audience rose to their feet in a standing ovation that went on for nearly 2 full minutes. Steve Harvey stood a few feet away, and he was not doing his host voice. He was not working the crowd. He was just watching, with his hand over his mouth and his eyes glistening under the studio lights, and when the cameras found his face, what they captured was not the television personality but the man, somebody who had been genuinely moved. When the moment settled, Steve spoke again. His voice was quiet and real. "Raymond," he said, "I have to tell you something. Your wife didn't betray you today. She honored you. Because what she just did took more courage than any answer on any game show. She looked at the truth and she chose love over silence. That's not disloyalty. That's the deepest kind of loyalty there is." Raymond nodded. He could not speak. He just nodded and held his wife. Steve turned to the audience and to the cameras. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, "we came here today to play a game. And we won. But what just happened on this stage is not a game. This is what marriage looks like. Not the easy version. The real version. 30 years of showing up, of sacrifice, of keeping promises even when keeping them costs you something." He paused. "Gloria, I want you to know something. Raymond asked you to carry that alone, and you did. You carried it because you loved him, but you don't have to carry it alone anymore, because this whole room just heard your story, and I promise you, you are not alone." When the episode aired, 3 weeks later, the reaction was immediate. The clip of Gloria's confession, Steve setting down his microphone, walking to Raymond, helping him onto the stage, was shared millions of times within the first 48 hours, not because it was dramatic in the way reality television is usually dramatic, but because it was real in a way that television almost never is. Parkinson's disease organizations began reaching out. The Parkinson's Foundation contacted the Washington family directly, offering support resources and inviting Gloria to speak about the experience of being a caregiver who carries the weight of a diagnosis in secret. She accepted. What she said in that first interview became widely shared. "I kept Raymond's secret because he asked me to, and I would do it again. But I also know now that secrets like that one, the heavy kind, the kind that weigh on you at 2 in the morning, those secrets need somewhere to go. I just needed to find the right place." The Washington daughters, Tanya and Keisha, gave their own interviews in the weeks that followed. Both of them described the shock of learning about their father's diagnosis on national television. But neither one expressed anger. What they both said independently was the same thing. They wished they had known sooner so they could have helped. And they were grateful to their mother for finally letting them in. Tanya put it simply, "My mother has been the strongest person in our family my whole life. I never knew the cost of that strength until that day. Now I do, and now I can finally help her carry it." Raymond, for his part, became someone who spoke openly about his diagnosis for the first time. A local Memphis news station did a profile on him and Gloria 3 months after the episode aired. He sat at the kitchen table, the same kitchen table where Gloria had been managing his medications quietly for 6 years, and he talked about what it had felt like to be helped onto that stage. "I've been a proud man my whole life," he said. "I thought that being strong meant never letting anyone see me struggle. But that day on that stage, Steve Harvey helped me up one step, and it didn't make me less of a man. It made me feel like I was finally allowed to be human." Steve Harvey, true to his nature, did not let the story end with a broadcast. He made a phone call to the Washington family the week after the episode aired. Not for a television segment, just a phone call. Gloria answered. She later described the conversation in an interview. He asked me how Raymond was doing. He asked me how I was doing. He didn't ask for anything. He just called to check on us, the way a good person checks on people they care about. 6 months after the taping, Family Feud reached out to the Washingtons about a follow-up segment. This time, all 4 of them came. Raymond, Gloria, Tanya, and Keisha. And what the cameras found was a family that had changed. Not because their circumstances had changed. Raymond's Parkinson's had not gone away. The tremors had not stopped. The hard mornings had not disappeared. What had changed was the silence. The daughters were now at doctor's appointments. They took turns calling their parents every day. Keisha, who lived 40 minutes away, had started bringing dinner every Sunday. Tanya, who lived in Atlanta, came home 1 weekend a month. The weight that Gloria had been carrying alone for 6 years had been distributed across 4 sets of hands. "I feel lighter," Gloria said in the follow-up segment. "For the first time in 6 years, I feel like I can breathe." Raymond looked across the stage at his wife when she said that, and even though his hand was trembling, he was smiling, the full, genuine smile of a man who has stopped pretending. Steve Harvey, who had not expected to be moved again, was moved again. He addressed the cameras at the end of that follow-up taping. "I have been doing this for a long time, and I want to say something to every person watching right now who is carrying something heavy in private. To every caregiver who is managing a spouse's illness alone. To every husband who thinks asking for help makes him weak. To every wife who has been keeping someone else's secret at the cost of her own peace." He paused. "Let the silence sit. You are allowed to tell the truth. You are allowed to need people. And love, real love, the kind Gloria and Raymond have, does not get weaker when the truth comes out. It gets stronger." In the months that followed the follow-up airing, the Washingtons became quiet advocates for Parkinson's awareness and, more specifically, for the invisible labor of caregivers. Gloria began speaking at caregiver support groups in the Memphis area. She was not a public speaker by training, and she did not try to be. She just told her story, plainly and honestly, the same way she had told it on national television. The response from those rooms was always the same: the tears, recognition, and relief. Because the thing Gloria had named, the loneliness of caring for someone in secret, the exhaustion of being the only one who knew, was something many in those rooms had never heard spoken out loud before. "I'm not special," Gloria told one support group. "I'm just a woman who got asked a question at the right moment and told the truth. That's all any of us can do." Raymond accompanied her to several of those events. He sat in the front row, the same way he had sat in the front row of the Family Feud audience, with his hands folded in his lap. But now, when the tremor came, he no longer hid it. He let it be visible. He had stopped spending his energy on concealment, and he used that energy for other things, for being present, for listening, for watching his wife tell their story to rooms full of strangers, and seeing those strangers feel less alone. 1 year after the original taping, Gloria received a letter from a woman in Ohio who had watched the episode with her husband. Her husband had Alzheimer's. He had been diagnosed 2 years prior, and she had been keeping it secret, at his request, for every one of those 24 months. She had watched Gloria on Family Feud and had told her husband that night that she needed to tell their children. She told Gloria in the letter, "You didn't just break your silence, you broke mine." Gloria read that letter at a caregiver conference in Nashville 6 months later. There was not a dry eye in the room. Steve Harvey, who had been sent a copy of the letter by the Family Feud production team, mentioned it on his talk show. He did not read it in full. He paraphrased it, carefully, out of respect for the woman who had written it. But he made the point that needed to be made. Gloria Washington came on a game show to win $20,000 for her family, he said. She won that. But what she really did that day was give people permission to stop suffering alone. You cannot put a price on that. The Parkinson's Foundation honored Gloria at their annual gala the following spring, presenting her with their Caregiver Courage Award. She brought Raymond with her. She brought Tanya and Keisha, and she wore the same navy blue blazer she had worn the morning of the Family Feud taping, because Raymond had said it made her look like a queen, and she had decided she was going to believe him. In her acceptance speech, she said something that people in that room would repeat for years afterward. For 6 years, I thought the most loving thing I could do for my husband was to protect him from the world seeing his struggle. I was wrong. The most loving thing I ever did for him was to finally let the world see how hard he had fought. Raymond stood up when she said that. Tremor and all, he stood up and he clapped. The whole room stood with him. 2 years after the original episode aired, a journalist writing a piece about authentic moments in game show history reached out to Gloria for an interview. She asked Gloria what she would say to the version of herself standing at the Fast Money podium before the cameras rolled. The version who had packed Raymond's medications in her purse and smiled for the cameras and planned to get through one more day without letting anyone know. Gloria thought about it for a long time. Then she answered, "I would tell her that she was stronger than she knew. I would tell her that Raymond was stronger than he knew. And I would tell her that the people around them, their daughters, their church, their community, were waiting to help. They just hadn't been given the chance yet." She paused. "I would tell her to stop protecting everyone else from the truth and let the truth protect her for once." Steve Harvey, in a later episode of his talk show, was asked to name the most memorable moment of his long career in television. He took a long time before he answered. Then he said, "I've had a lot of moments, but there was a woman named Gloria who came on Family Feud and told the truth when it cost her something, and her husband, Raymond, who let himself be helped up one step. That moment reminded me that the most powerful thing television can do is not entertain people. It's make people feel less alone." He smiled. "That's what Gloria did. She made people feel less alone. And that, to me, is the whole game.